Daily Dose. My name's Robert, and this is my pal Susan, and we're on a hot streak right now. We got all sorts of things we're together in fun ways, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation. Um, we talked in terms of positive regard, right? What it was, sorry,
Unconditional.
unconditional. There's the important part of that unconditional positive regard, Carl Rogers. And this has to do with accepting all. I think this is an incredibly important thing. I'm going to tie this back to the Warriors and Draymond Green, who has been a subject of our conversations. Um, you don't get to choose with the person the parts you like if you
Oh
want
my
to.
gosh. So true. Oh my gosh.
I think of the beautiful song by John Legend, right? All of me loves
Oh
all
yeah.
of you.
Oh,
And so with with Draymond, because you'd asked about him and that thing, the Warriors, Steve Kerr in particular, but the Warriors as an organization know what they have in him. They recognize all the curves and all the edges, the imperfections that make up him, and they love all of him.
yeah.
They allow space even for the things that are frustrating and difficult. And it's the same with the team as a whole. I was listening to some sports commentary about that the common thing is, gosh, if this Warriors team could just cut down on their turnovers, they'd be great. And it's like, no, they have a lot of turnovers and they are great. Part of, as I heard somebody describe, the cost of doing business for the way they play. In order to get the freedom and fluidity they're going to have, it's going to require some of those frustrating things to come out, and some of them did last night. They had this is dated, I suppose, at this point, but in their championship closeout game 6, they had a lot of turnovers in that game.
Mhm.
Uh, in a game where they weren't causing so many turnovers and receiving so many from Boston, it might have cost them. In the scope of what they were doing, it was okay. So rather than criticizing the small pieces and trying to alleviate those things, it seems to me our true goal and benefit is to accept the whole person and allow that whole person not to not hold them accountable, right? It doesn't mean it's Shangri-La and just do whatever, anarchy. It's not that. That's where people go when they hear this. And I want to be very clear. There is accountability, and the individual must accept his or her status. And in Draymond's case, that's what we talked about. He's been coming up saying, yeah, I sucked. Yeah, I was off. Yeah, the Boston crowd got to me. Whatever
Mhm.
it was,
Mhm.
maybe he
All of
opened himself up with this podcast to hear too much, and it hurt him a little.
it. Mhm.
And guess what?
He learned something.
Yeah,
He
well,
internalized. Mhm.
yeah, he would say to the reporter last night, funny, he said, what'd you learn? I learned nothing. And that's fine. Still dreaming
Really? That's awesome.
those
That's
words.
so funny. No, I didn't know that.
And here's his mom on Twitter saying, I don't know who Draymond, is this Draymond clone, whatever. He heard from others, and he came back and he held himself accountable. And the Warriors got an incredible version of him in the last couple of games that led to the championship. So to you, that accepting all of the person, not just the pieces you like, what does that mean?
I'm taking it out of the sports arena into my personal life. What you said when you started was the whole. We commit to a person in a, like, let's say, a marriage. We have a relationship with a person, like, let's say you're the child of this person, or you're the parent of this person, or even your dog. You have, it's not perfect. And and it's not even like a balance. I mean, it's not like judging how much is good versus how much isn't. You just have to recognize it. I mean, I've learned recently, actually pretty recently, that there's always going to be pieces of the puzzle that don't fit with my notion of what it should look like. And you go with it. If it's too much, you have to leave. And if it's, like, let's say it's your mom, if you have to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm okay right up to here, but over here it's wearing me out, or whatever, that we have a responsibility for our own happiness and our own being centered, but we can't expect perfection, and we can't expect the other guy to have every little thing right. Maybe their style of fighting is different. Maybe their vocabulary is different. Maybe they're like, well, I guess this is a matter of style. So with my husband and I tend to need to have all the details, and he needs to go right to the end of the story, and then after that fill in all the details. And I don't even understand. I don't want to hear the end of the story till I've worked my way up to it. Those are really different approaches to how to have a conversation, but on the whole, it's never going to be perfect. It's some notion of perfect.
Right. And I think that harkens back to what I talked about in terms of the process. Communication, relationships, these are all a process, and they are attributable to and connected to this larger thing that we're renters in this um floating, spirits in the material world, as it were. And we happen to be earthbound at the moment, and on this planet certain things work a certain way, and maybe they don't always align with our spiritual self. And that's where I think you said, or I heard at least, accountability, boundaries, and there was something else that was really good within
Well,
what.
vulnerable, and you have to be willing to accept that, you know, the whole counts. So I've learned with the example I just gave, there's a lot of value and a lot of wisdom in jumping to the end of the story first and then building in the details. Sometimes that facilitates a better kind of communication, just as
Right.
an example. So being different doesn't mean it's not going to work, but it also, I think we have to accept that no one else is us.
Yeah.
And we see through our own lenses. And I
Oh,
don't see through these lenses except when I'm on the computer.
perspective, unbelievable, and something for another episode. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Susan. Well done. That's your daily dose.